Well, hello everyone. This is Nurse Keith here from beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico, with my friend and colleague and peer Beth Hawks coming to you from Bakersfield, California. We are here under the auspices of allnurses.com, and we are doing a roundup, a debriefing of our experience at Nurses Take DC. Right, Beth?
That's right.
That's right.
So exciting.
It was really exciting to be together with the All Nurses team and also with the Nurses Take DC and Show Me Your Stethoscope folks. So big shout out to Show Me Your Stethoscope LLC and also to the entire Nurses Take DC team. They did an awesome job. We had beautiful weather for the rally, didn't we, Beth?
You know, it was just kind of amazing. The day before it rained,
Mm-hmm.
rally, and of course the rally's outside right in front of the Capitol, so there was a concern that if it rained we'd have to go to plan B. The day of the rally was perfect blue skies, sun above, and the day after the rally, as I flew out, it was raining again. So we did have perfect weather.
Right. So the clouds parted for Nurses Take DC. We had a great time. Actually, the day before the rally, we all met up at the Holiday Inn and Suites in Alexandria, Virginia, Old Town, where a lot of the nurses were staying, actually. And we had a networking day, which was really fun. And I saw a lot of my friends there, some of whom actually couldn't even come to the rally the next day. But we had a great time there. And Beth, there was an awesome seminar that day, wasn't there?
There was.
Yeah. What was that seminar about?
It was about nurse advocacy, and it was oh my gosh, why am I blanking on her name? Pam Collins? Yeah, sorry about that.
I'm blanking on your name too. Our apologies.
It'll come to me, I'm sure some of you have word retrieval at times. She's an excellent professional speaker and nurse out of the Midwest, Illinois, I believe. And
Pamela S. Robbins.
Pamela Robbins, yes.
Yes.
And she gave a very inspiring talk. It was actually for CEs, for continuing education, so she's kind of a pro at this, on advocacy for nurses and how it's important that we take that first step to become advocates and, on the state and national level. And she showed us, she told us many simple ways to do that and kind of pretty much rallied the troops.
Mm-hmm. She talked about letter writing. She talked about making phone calls. She talked about petitions. She talked about actually visiting your legislators in their offices, which many of us did. And Beth, I know you and Mary Watts from All Nurses visited quite a few representatives, didn't you? Members of Congress.
Yes, that was so, what's the word for it? We were in, the building where the senators are, and then in another time where the representatives are, and walking down the halls, Mary Watts and myself, who's not on this video broadcast, but she's community director at All Nurses, and we had an appointment to meet Senator Bob Corker. Actually, breakfast with Senator Bob Corker and Senator Alexander, the two senators from Tennessee. So that was just pretty awesome, as you can imagine. Just to be standing there where all the power decisions, happen in our country and sometimes the center of the world. It was just very inspiring and awesome to feel like you can really be a part of that. And our senators and representatives we do have access to them. We just have to reach out. And it's our responsibility now, because this movement and the conversation and the discussion around staffing is building. I can see it on social media everywhere. Nurses everywhere around the country are just, they've all just kind of had enough of short staffing and poor staffing and not knowing that their patients are safe or that they can complete their workload in a safe manner. And so I think the time is really right to reach out to your representatives. They want to hear from us. The senators that we met with were very receptive. They want to hear from nurses. I will tell you that they hear from large lobbying organizations, such as the American Hospital Association, such as even the American Nurses Association. But those views and the bills that those large lobbying organizations introduce do not necessarily represent me or you. or your friend who's working shift on med surg tomorrow, or the ICU nurse who's getting off and had 3 patients or 4 patients. And so they need to hear from us. Say, hi, I'm a nurse. I'm a constituent in your state. This is how I would like you to vote. And this is why I am asking you to support safe nurse-patient ratios.
Right. And something that really came across in that seminar, and something I've learned over the years, is that our legislators, either at the state level or at the national level, they need to be educated, because not many of them are healthcare professionals. Some of them are. There are some nurses in Congress. There are doctors in the Congress and in the Senate, but the majority of them are not. A lot of them are lawyers, or they've worked in all different types of industries. And so many bills, so many issues come across their desks that they need constituents, expert constituents, to educate them about what to think about these bills, right? So if we have a bill that the ANA is backing that doesn't support nurse-patient ratios or mandated ratios, and we have a bill that we are backing that actually does, they need to understand why we support the bill mandating nurse-patient ratios. And I met with the healthcare staffers of both of my senators, and that was really fun. They sat down with me, each of them for about 20 minutes, and we got to go through the bills. I showed them the pros and cons of each bill and explained to them as a nurse and a constituent why I supported the bills that I'm supporting. And they are bringing that message to the senators for whom they work. Now, I couldn't get an appointment with my senators, Tom Udall. I couldn't meet with him. So I'm going to make an appointment to see him in his home office here in Santa Fe, which is probably more likely to happen than trying to meet with him in the Hart Senate building in DC. So I'm going to make appointments to meet with them. What I also did is I stopped by the office of Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio. He's a Democrat from Ohio, and he is one of the main sponsors of Senate Bill 1063. And I basically just left a message for him, supporting him and thanking him for being our sponsor. So you can also do that. You can just bring a nice message saying, thanks for doing it.
Absolutely. And I just want to kind of review really quick on what this legislation really means. I'm from California, so as you know, it's the only state that has nurse-patient ratios. And I will tell you that almost every nurse that I talk to at the rally doesn't really have an understanding what that means, because there's quite a bit of speculation about nurse-patient ratios that really isn't true. So what I tried to explain at the rally was that, the day before I left for the rally on my unit, which is telemetry, the nurses only have 4 patients. And so I know across the United States, different organizations are saying things such as, well, if you have nurse-patient ratios, you won't have any ancillary staff. And I explained that's just not true. On my unit, we have lab phlebotomists or phlebs that draw blood. Our nurses do not draw their own blood. They do not administer their own aerosol or nebulizer treatments. Respiratory therapy does. We have a clinical pharmacist on the unit Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week, available to the nurses. We have a charge nurse that is dedicated charge nurse, meaning she takes no patients. We also have a throughput nurse that was just added that doesn't take patients.
Wow.
Who helps facilitate admissions and discharges. So, and I could give you so many more examples. My hospital is not unique whatsoever. This is very typical for California. I wanted to get that message out because some nurse colleagues in Massachusetts and New Jersey especially have reached out and said, gee, our nursing organization said that we're going to lose ancillary staff and the wait times will increase and hospitals are going to shut down, and what's the truth? Is that what's happening in California? So I really was grateful for the opportunity to share what it's really like under nurse-patient ratios, and I don't know a nurse in California that would go back to not having ratios.
That's what I gather from all the nurses in California that I've spoken with and that were there in DC a couple weeks ago as well. And I think it's very important for us to be educated, because if people ask us those questions, we need to be able to answer them. So if you would like to go to your legislators or write a letter or make a phone call, just make sure you have a couple of those facts under your belt so that you can pull them out as needed. There are lots of cheat sheets. There's lots of information that you can get a hold of from the Show Me Your Stethoscope folks. And Beth, you have a lot of that stuff at your fingertips too. But it's very important for us to make sure we understand the process. And one thing we wanted to explain that Mary Watts was explaining to us before the call is that these bills, as they make their way through the Senate, they get stuck in different committees, right? And in the Senate and also in the House. And they get stuck in committee because the committee has to come to some agreement to move it on for a vote, to send it back to the floor. And they get stuck in committees and they can die in committees. So, Beth, does it seem like the bill for the House and bill for the Senate are both stuck in committee right now?
Yeah, I can speak to the one on the Senate Bill 1073.
1063.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. And it calls for safe staffing, nurse-patient ratios. Is right now the committee that it is stuck in is the next committee is the U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. So we learned by talking to health staffers. I did learn a little tip in D.C., Mary and I, that to help nudge that bill out of committee, and after it's out of committee, it can be up for a vote, would be to contact the chair of that committee. And that's a great idea. That happens to be Senator Lamar Alexander from Tennessee. So any nurse in the United States could contact Senator Lamar Alexander and tell them that you're a nurse, you're supported, you would like to see this move forward in committee. So there's actually the national legislation, and at the same time, there's parallel movements going on state by state. So similar to what California did, Massachusetts is the next state that may get nurse-patient ratios. It looks pretty likely in the fall. National legislation by what they're doing. They're also asking for help, meaning they would like everybody to help petition. If you go on Nurses Take DC website, you can find out how to do that. A little bit of solidarity for our brothers and sisters in Massachusetts. If it passes in Massachusetts on the state level, the next state will most likely be New Jersey. Right. And after that, it'll be a domino effect, I think. So it can happen at the national level, and at the same time, state by state level, and the state by state's looking pretty promising, I think. Right.
Thanks for pointing that out. I just want to make a little comparison. So, it is hard to get things through Congress these days. It's a tough call. It's also hard to get things through your state legislature sometimes. We had our state legislature was in session just a couple months ago, and there was a lot of contentious stuff happening here in New Mexico. But what I'll say is that let's use the example of gay marriage. And I think we've talked about this before on one of these Facebook Lives. And if we haven't, that's okay. I'm going to mention it now. And whether you're for or against it, I just want to use this as an example that sometimes things can't really get passed nationally until the states step up. California stepped up for nurse-patient ratios. Massachusetts is going to step up next, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. That happened with gay marriage too. It kind of made its way around the country, and eventually the bigger powers that be, the Supreme Court, et cetera, decided that they would go with the will of the people. So what happens at the state level is very, very important. So don't lose hope. Don't give up if it seems like it's not going to pass in the Congress this year. It's good to stay kind of sitting on the shoulder of those members of Congress and those senators, explaining to them, whispering in their ear about why this is a good thing. And even if it doesn't pass this year, our sponsors will bring it around next year in the next Congress, which might be a very different Congress than it is now, actually, come to think of it, with the November midterm elections coming up in 2018. And we might see a very different reaction to these bills next year. We never know. So don't despair. You might want to get in touch and see what's happening with your legislature, especially if you're in Massachusetts or New Jersey. See how you might get involved, because that domino effect that Beth mentioned is real. And the powers that be up the echelons of power are going to start listening the more states pass these legislative agendas themselves.
Excellent. That really, really good. Well put, Keith. And I just think the momentum is there right now. The time is now. We really have a good chance for success if we all will do one thing. If before the end of the week, if you would just make a phone call, it's easy to do. Hello, tell your representative I'm a nurse. Tell them I'm a voting constituent, and the person answering the phone, perhaps a secretary, that's okay, is going to make note of that, because that's their job, to let the representative know, oh my gosh, 100 nurses called in today, and they will stop and really take a look at that. And the bills that you want to mention again, Senate 1063 and HR 2382.
92. Yeah. So it's S 1063 and HR 2392. They're pretty much identical. One bill in the Senate, one bill in the House. And they're both making their way through the committees there very, very slowly. This is a slow-moving ship, friends. So you want to reach out to these senators and congresspeople and make sure that they know what you think. Make sure you say you're a nurse. It'll be very, very important for them to know you're a nurse. Now we have a message to us, a comment from Aline Nitsky. Hi, Aline Nitsky. How are you? She just joined us from Colorado, and she's saying, before the mergers earlier in the decade, the hospital where I worked had similar staffing to what Beth describes. That was in anti-union or right-to-work state Colorado. Then we merged with a big organization, and it all went steeply downhill. It just shows that it can be done anywhere if there's commitment. It's not as much a money thing as it is a reallocation of resources. Keep after the legislators, keep on top of it. Next year, we might have a better chance too, but don't give up. We all must do something. Thank you, Aline. And Aline and I are going to be talking just next week, so I can't wait to chat with her again. So that's a great point by Aline. We can't give up. We have to keep pushing through, and we have to work at the state and national level to see what needle we can move. And Aline also says nurses need to be visible to legislators. So the more nurses they hear from, and you know that people trust nurses, the Gallup poll says so, so it must be true, then if they hear from us, they're going to trust what we have to say. And if they don't hear from us, that's a voice they have not heard. And I'll just say very briefly that my talk at the DC rally in front of the Capitol didn't talk about the legislation specifically. What I talked about was the theme of nurses' voices mattering, that nurses' voices matter. I repeated that with the crowd 1 million times because I wanted them to go home repeating that to themselves. Nurses' voices matter. So one of the questions I asked of the crowd was, who's the next person that's going to run for city council? Who's the next person who's going to run for mayor? Who's going to run for the Senate or state Senate or the House or maybe even the presidency itself? That nurses can work their ways into positions of power locally, regionally, statewide, and nationally in order to insinuate their opinion into the public conversation. So for those of you who have a little political bent, think about running for office. Even if it's locally, you can still have a big, big impact.
Good point. Good point.
Thanks.
I want to ask each one of you listening to this if you would do two things. If you would commit to making a phone call, just make a phone call to your representatives. And it's okay if you don't even know who your representative is. It's easy to find out. Just go Google who's my representative and put in your zip code, and you will get the contact information and the name and your senators. If you're going to do that, then would you please click like on this to let us know that you're going to do it? And I have an analogy to match kind of Keith's on the gay marriage going state by state. I'm thinking, I just had this vision of a big old pickup truck that's stuck kind of maybe in the dirt. You ever seen a car or a pickup truck with the wheels just spinning? So it's a very powerful truck, but right now it's spinning a little bit. If each one of you will help push it, it's going to push these bills forward.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of you helping, and by helping I mean one phone call, is going to push it an inch. But it's a lot of inches if all of you would just promise to make one phone call.
That's right. So if you think about that pickup truck being stuck on the icy snow, so each of you making that call is one piece of gravel stuck underneath the wheel, helping it to gain some traction. So if we put 500, 1,000, 10,000 pieces of nurse gravel under the tire, under the wheel, that will move that vehicle out of the ditch back onto the road towards passing this legislation, or at least getting it out of committee. So that is a really important piece for you all to realize, that you can have that impact.
And I think nurse gravel is like very high quality gravel.
It is.
It is, because we are what? The most trusted profession. So when we call our representatives, trust me, they are listening, and they are going to believe us, and they're going to take it into consideration. And while you're at it, tell them a story from your experience, so that they'll remember.
That's right. Yeah, stories really matter. They will listen to you. If you tell a story of working in the ICU with 4 patients and running around and not being able to give the care you wanted to give, say, you can tell them, that person in that bed could have been your cousin, your friend from high school, could have been your spouse or your child. And if it wasn't that time, it could be the next time. So just remember that, and tell them that in your constituency, in the hospitals in the state where they are representatives of that state, you can say, if a nurse has 10 patients on a med-surg floor, she is not going to be able to give the care to your constituents, and you're going to have constituents who may die or have nosocomial infections or other complications because these nurse-patient ratios have not been mandated. So you can bring it home to them and say it could be you in the hospital bed, though actually a member of Congress probably gets the best health care they can possibly get, the VIP care, so they might not relate.
That's a broadcast. But that reminds me.
That's another broadcast.
I love what Pamela Robbins said. She goes, when you get the opportunity to talk to one of representatives in person, which is not that hard to do, like he said, in your hometown, when we travel to DC, but you can do it right where you live, especially a representative. She said, one of the first things you want to do is make a connection and make it personal. I thought, I wonder how you do that in a short amount of time. And she said, you can just start the conversation with, Senator, have you or a loved one been in the hospital recently?
Mm-hmm.
How many patients the nurse had? That's a great way to start. You're gonna get the engagement right away.
Good point. Yeah. Did you know how many patients your nurse had, or did your nurse seem a little harried? Yeah. Did it seem like he didn't have enough time to do what he really needed to do? Did he seem frustrated? Good question. And you could even tell the senator, next time you visit somebody in the hospital, ask the nurse, how many patients you got right now? And see what they say. Or they can ask, when's the last time you had a break? When's the last time you had a glass of water? And they can get a little bit more educated about what our lives are really like, boots on the ground. So Beth, just to wrap up, we are letting people know that it is S-1063 in the Senate, H.R. 2392 in the House, and people can reach out to their members of Congress and their senators on those bills. Make sure it's the right bill for the right House that you're contacting. S is always a Senate bill. HR is always the House of Representatives. Make sure you have that right. Always make sure to say you're a constituent if you are. And always make sure that you are identifying yourself as a nurse. It's very important for them to know. Aline Nitsky says, as I mentioned in my book, Keith, the disparity between Congress and the public in health coverage. That's right. So members of Congress might not necessarily be able to relate to some of the struggles that we have. And, there's nothing we can do about that, nothing they can do about that. So they need to hear the stories from their constituents. So something you can also do, if you have a patient or a friend or a family member who's been in a hospital where the nurse-patient ratios were not very good and they had a negative experience, have them call that member of Congress or senator and tell their story as a constituent patient. Or if they are from, let's say, California, and they had a really positive experience, they can talk to their senator or representative about how amazing it was that there were mandated ratios. So a lot of different ways to approach this particular issue. And we encourage all of you to make calls. Calls are very, very effective, much more effective than emails. So we recommend that you call. Identify yourself, say that you're a nurse, that you're a voting constituent, what bill you're calling about, and what your opinion is about that bill. Right, Beth?
That's right.
That's right. Any last minute advice for our wonderful listeners and viewers?
If anything that we said resonated, if you felt excited or passionate and you see the benefit of helping with this, then just act on it, because if you don't, within a couple of days, you'll forget that feeling. So
right.
I want you to really act on it and help out, and you're going to be a part of something bigger than yourself, which is nurses standing together for patient safety. So thank you so much.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Beth. Thank you to all nurses. And a big, 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 big shout out to Nurses Take DC, and a big shout out to Show Me Your Stethoscope for the amazing work they did in DC and the continued advocacy that they are doing. Remember to always come back to allnurses.com, at allnurses.com, or here on Facebook. Make sure you can share these videos with your friends and colleagues who are on Facebook. You can also comment in the comments section and leave a reply telling us about the call you made, the email you sent, the letter you sent, the conversation you had, and just let us know what actions you're taking. It would be really great for us to just get that feedback. So thank you all very much. Happy Nurses Week, by the way. Beth, happy Nurses Week.
And to you.
Thank you very much. And we will be back again. Remember, allnurses.com, all nurses on Facebook. Keep in touch with us, and we will be back at you soon. Let's keep up the momentum and take care, nurses.